It. All right, we're talking about our livestock producers and the inputs that goes into what we make and sell at the farmers market or wherever we sell our meat products. We have High Rocks here tonight. We have Sarah Riley and we have Emmet Doolittle, and they are going to talk to us about tracking our inputs, guide us through the best practices, and help us to maybe develop some strategies and thought processes that we can follow as we go about our work. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank Extension Risk Management Education for the funding for tonight's program and say the tongue twister that I say every time that Extension Risk Management is funded through USDA's NIFA program, and this material is based on work supported through USDA under award number 2003 70027404447. So we've got that covered. We've thanked our funders, and Sarah, this is a housekeeping note throughout our other sessions. As people had questions, they asked during the presentation. Are you okay with that as well?
Totally.
Okay, then that's how we will continue on. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you will be able to share your screen.
All right. Well, I'm going to start just saying thank you guys for introducing yourselves. I'm in Pocahontas County. That's where I grew up. That's where I live now. And tonight we're actually going to be talking about a project that's focusing on a pilot looking at fair pricing and starting with produce, but I think a lot of it is applicable to the way that we have to think about meat pricing. I married into a farm. So in 2002, we started our meat business here on the farm outside of my life at High Rock. So we sell beef, pork, lamb, and eggs, free range. We've done some produce. We've done some small restaurants or retail. We've sold by the cut. We've sold by the package. We've sold by the half and the whole. So I have a lot of lived deep experience in how complicated it is, particularly to set prices. And setting prices in the meat business is so complicated and so important. In my day job, I'm the executive director of High Rocks Educational Corporation. And our mission at High Rocks is to educate, empower, and inspire young people in West Virginia. So we're working with young people. Our target age range is 12 to 29. So from the first moments of coming of age as an adult into the end of middle school, high school, whatever comes after high school, college, into early career, and really understanding from that work and from our core beginnings that we also need to create pathways for young people to be able to thrive in West Virginia. So we do a lot with learning, a lot with leadership, a lot with health and wellness, and a lot with community engagement. And so if you're working with young people and you care about health and wellness, you are definitely feeding people and you are definitely working with food. And so I'm going to let Emmett introduce himself and talk a little bit about where he comes from and specifically one of our 7 major programs, which is our local foods program. And then we'll dive into the PowerPoint. Go ahead, Emmett.
Hello, everybody. I'm Emmet Doolittle. I'm a recent graduate from WVU with a degree in horticulture, and I moved back to my small town here in Pocahontas and started at High Rocks, which happens to be my next door neighbor right up the hill. And here in May of 2024, I started with the local foods team, where we operate a social enterprise called Ruby Grow. It's an agricultural program where we teach young people in our community and nearby while they work and learn and earn a wage and learn how to grow and sell organic produce. We do a lot of education with workshops that we host around various topics, and we invite anyone in the community to come and learn from them. We also have our farm to school days where the local elementary school comes and they actually take part in putting their hands in the dirt and growing some crops and harvesting them. And today we are presenting a project that I am really excited about and hope to make a difference in our whole state.
So we're super excited to announce to you guys, let me start this PowerPoint, that we have just gotten our very first big USDA grant at High Rocks, and it's a Farmers Market Promotion Program grant focused on the program Emmet's talking about, our farm. That is a ag training center and an earning and learning program, Ruby Grow. So this project that you applied for is a longtime heart project of mine, but has two major halves of it. And as somebody that has, we've struggled as a small farm on Stompa Creek Farm here in our family, and also how do we really make an agricultural training program that's telling young people that they can make it as new and beginning farmers, and how do we make sure that they can build good lives for themselves, they can buy houses, they can have access to land. How can we support young people like Emmet to make that dream be true? And so we wrote a project, and the USDA has come through to support it. So it's going to be happening for the next about 2.5 years. I think the big thing that we've been missing when we talk about local foods is really focusing on pricing. So we've talked a lot about, do we have the production capacity, aggregation and distribution, where's the market? But so many of the projects that I've been involved in over the last 20+ years, I think the place that it's really fallen apart is price. And I think this is a really good time for us to be focusing on thinking about what is a price that makes it possible for farmers to make a living and to make a life for themselves. So, I mean, you guys are our home crowd. I'm preaching to the choir here, but yeah, pricing and profit margins are major hurdles for farm businesses and for the entire agricultural industry, particularly for small farms, for rural places, for small farms like all of ours that are on this call. So according to the agricultural census, I mean, even though I know this in my heart and I know this from, our farming community, about 73% of farms had sales under $10,000, and almost 65% of all West Virginia farms had a net financial loss in 2022. We really struggle to understand the complicated puzzle that's pricing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So many people will go to the grocery store and say, this is how much it costs, or try to keep track of all their inputs. I'm good at math, and I've been doing this a long time, and it's still really hard for me. I think that we have a real opportunity for consumers, individuals, schools, hospitals, food banks, institutional scale buyers. They don't always understand why pricing for local products is different than the prices that you're paying at Walmart, for example, or off that truck. Number two, I definitely got on the bandwagon, maybe like 8 years ago of like, oh, we're going to grow all this, for example, Appalachian Harvest, butternut squash, and we're going to package it up and we're going to take it to high-priced DC farmers markets, and that's how we're going to do it. But really, my heart is in growing food for the people in our community that need it the most. We have a desperate lack of produce access in our rural food deserts all across West Virginia. And we want to feed people. We want to feed our neighbors. We want to feed our friends. We want to feed kids. We want to feed old people. It's also true that consumers, especially in rural areas, have trouble finding farmers markets and other direct-to-consumer access points. So even, just last year, people were sending me Facebook messages saying, hey, I have these vouchers to use at a farmer's market, but nobody at the farmer's market takes them. Like, I don't know where to use these kind of dollars. And so people that depend on SNAP or WIC, the lunch program, senior programs, they really need access to healthy, fresh, nutrient-dense local foods at an affordable price. And we believe that opportunity exists to increase farm to institution, farm to consumer relationships, particularly for hospitals, food banks, schools, and other institutions with federal subsidy dollars for local foods. This is a pilot that we were funded to start, and we're starting with a focus on produce. But I think everything that we're talking about here 100% also applies to meat. So I know we have a lot of majority here that are just doing meat. It's harder to keep track of all the time and the inputs and the produce. I mean, we have a calf operation. I have a lamb in my kitchen behind me right now that hopefully will not wake up during this call. And it's hard to keep track of that, but it's really important. So the cost of food at the grocery store is complicated. And honestly, most farmers don't understand how complicated that is. And buyers definitely don't, in terms of working with, school systems that have money to procure local foods, including meat or eggs or local produce. They don't understand why those prices are so different, or they do, right? I have some school systems that 100%, they came from a farming community, they've worked on local foods, they understand why those prices are different. And then we have other people that don't understand why they're so different, because they don't understand policy, and they don't understand that policy affects farming and prices. And so the vast majority of American agriculture is underwritten by federal subsidies. Those subsidies largely go to huge producers, industrial scale producers, and are also supported by migrant labor that is paid below a living wage. And that depresses food prices that we see in the grocery store that people are used to as well. So because people don't understand all of that, it's taken me up to 4 years of a continuing relationship with a school buyer or an institutional buyer to really take all of that time to educate them why that's true. I want to give a shout out to Steve Saffel. He's our farm manager at High Rocks. He has been growing and selling produce and meats locally for over 20 years. He's one of the most gifted growers I've ever had the pleasure to know, and I've known him for a long time. His doctor has ordered him to be on medical leave, so he's not with us here. So I'm the stand-in for Steve. But he's amazing, and he's going to be leading this project. And he wanted to leave you with, to be able to lead on this project is so moving for me. It's something I've been pushing for 30 years. And I bet there are other people in this group that feel exactly that same way. So why set prices with farmers? This is a big debate in a lot of markets. For a lot of growers, you have some people that are like, I can't make a living from this. And then some people that may be at your market who are retired or setting prices from the grocery store. And so some markets agree these are going to be, we're not going to sell below this price. We're not in this project recommending that we tell anybody what to sell their products for. But we are recommending in this project that we really need to figure out what fair prices are, because fair prices mean that farmers stay in business. Local farmers, small farmers, and at High Rocks, we work with young people. I have a special love for new and beginning farmers. But people are hesitant to choose farming as a career because there's a lack of financial support and stability, and farmers are scared that if they get into that, they're not going to be able to stay there. And that's not new. I mean, that's something that a couple generations of us at least have been raised with understanding. And too many new and beginning farmers and small farmers can't afford to stay in business because they're not making a profit. And they can't afford to hire people to work because farmers are already making below the minimum wage. So whether you're talking about produce or whether you're talking about meat, this is a major hurdle that we need to look at, that we need to understand in a different way. And so with this project, honestly, I was like, I can't grow farmers if they can't make a living. And so for me, the fundamental starting place is, what does it take to grow food that people can make a modest living? I'm not talking about buying mansions, right? I'm just talking about being able to care for yourself, to have health insurance, to have a viable business that you can raise a family on and be part of a community for. All right, Emmett, talk to us about these fair pricing. So for us, fair pricing means it's a price that a farmer can make a living from. Go ahead, Em.
Yes, so our goals with this project are to create a standardized price list based on the living wage in West Virginia for locally produced fruit and vegetables based on labor inputs in partnership with the state. Educate communities and farmers about using resources more affordable foods, such as accepting SNAP, WIC, and senior farmers market vouchers, and to focus on other markets that have access to federal subsidy dollars. Our third goal is to create education tools and branding for farmers using this fair wage price, and to educate the public on why this fair wage campaign should exist. Next slide, Sarah, if you could. Our first objective is to conduct a market feasibility study. This will help us understand the amount of the federal subsidy dollars available to determine our market opportunity, including with the schools and hospitals. Our second objective is to collect labor input and production yields from local growers. And then we will develop a standard living wage pricing list recommended for fresh produce in West Virginia. We will then develop and implement branding, marketing, and educational campaigns for growers and consumers about living wage products, pricing on products, sorry. We will then also educate farmers on using living wage pricing for their products and marketing their products at direct-to-consumer food access points. Increasing local food access points, especially for seniors and participants in the WIC, SNAP, and SNAP Stretch programs. Our last objective is to sell fair price produce under annual contracts to local schools, hospitals, pharmacy, food banks, and other volume buyers to increase market access for farmers. Over here is a picture of some of our elementary school students who came and harvested some pumpkins and butternut squash that day. High Rock serves as an anchor organization in 2 statewide networks, lead project management and communication. We will be keeping labor and production records on our farm and with our agricultural partners, support farmers to track labor inputs and production records. And we will also track all data and metrics. The West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition will lead the branding and website for our fair pricing campaign. And the West Virginia Department of Ag and the Department of Education will convene to develop reasonable and fair pricing lists for distribution to the state.
So going back just for a second before we move on to the next slide, when I was saying we are not trying to tell people what they need to charge, but we are trying to work together. And you'll see some of our partners on these next slides with the West Virginia Department of Agriculture, Cherry and crew, and with the Department of Education, so that we're working with the state, because those agencies, the state of West Virginia wants to keep West Virginia small farmers in business for sure. And so we have to work together to develop a price list that the state has looked at and said, so that a nutrition director at a school system who may not be as educated about all these issues can say, okay, the state says this is a fair and reasonable price. And that people are selling at farmers markets, and somebody says, why does this tomato cost so much money? Maybe eventually, why does this egg cost so much money? That you can share with them and say, this is what it means. Because if it's under this, then we're putting farmers out of business in West Virginia. And that's not what we want to be doing.
There was a
So the
question
farmers
there-
market.
Oh, just a second.
Go
There was a
ahead.
question there in the chat. Audra asked, with the fair pricing list, if I understand this correctly, the question, wouldn't the farmers' inputs be different? And this is just a guide for really like you said, state purchasing, because so many school districts or different places want to pay Cisco prices. You know, that's the big food producer, big food truck supplier here, not local farm prices. So it's just a gauge, but go on, please.
No, that's a great question, Audra. And that gets to the heart of the problem in our local food system when you're talking about pricing. Because when you're talking about pricing for local foods, yes, those inputs are really different. Even if you leave out Cisco and you leave out commercial agriculture, if you've been doing this for 20 years and you know what you're doing and you're a master in what you're doing, it's not going to take you as long to grow a set of carrots, right? You're going to know what you're doing. You're not going to have to experiment in the same way. But if we want to keep farms growing in West Virginia, it has to be an access point where new and beginning farmers can make a living from doing it. And so we don't lose them in the very beginning. And then, you know, to my mind, the better you get at farming, the more efficient that you get at it, then the more money that you make from it. But a lot of times what we see now from producers is that if you as your volume goes up, you're actually making less money, which should not be true when you're keeping track of your labor inputs. So the funded grant partners, Hyrox, we've talked a little bit about our role. Want to put a huge shout out to the Benedum Foundation, because you can't get money from the USDA unless somebody's willing to come up with a match for that. And the Benedum Foundation 100% stepped up with a match for this project for us to be able to do it in West Virginia. And this was one of the 2 big farmers market promotion grants that was funded in West Virginia this year. You know, this is such a big project to talk about pricing, to talk about educating consumers and producers all across West Virginia. Honestly, I really think of this as like seed money for us to be able to start this conversation. The West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition is a major partner. And so they're really going to be working on developing the education and outreach campaign. So there will actually be materials that you can use when you're selling at a market that talk about the fair pricing list. There'll be a QR code that you can put up. People can go, there'll be a whole website that sort of unpacks why these prices are different than Cisco prices and what that means and what it means for West Virginia and what it means for West Virginia small farmers. Five Rivers Cooperative is a small cooperative of growers in Richwood, West Virginia. They're our neighbors and partners, and they definitely committed to keep track of harvest yields. The other cool thing that we're doing together with Five Rivers and actually with New River Community and Technical College and Coalfield Development, which is the next partner that I'm going to talk about, is developing a curriculum for new farmers and even people that just want to get better at what they're doing. It'll be a curriculum and also a workforce credential through New River to start with, but I think it can grow from there in regenerative agricultural practices, right? How can you actually grow food, make a living from it, have that food also be making our soil better, be producing more all of the time. Coalfield Development, they have a lot of social enterprises. One of our social enterprises, so a social enterprise is just a business with a triple bottom line that cares not just about money, but it cares about profit, people, and place. We've learned a lot about that from our partners at Coalfield Development, and one of their social enterprises is Refresh Appalachia, so that may be familiar to you guys. They're a major thought partner in this work with us. And Fayette County Schools. So we've had actually over the years a fair amount of AmeriCorps members across the state of West Virginia that have been working in schools. Fayette County is one of them, trying to help grow relationships with producers, think about fair pricing, think about education for students in school. And the nutrition director at Fayette County Schools, fun fact, Andy Pence, was actually an AmeriCorps member in Fayette County Schools working on food, local foods, and food access. So he's somebody that really, he's now the nutrition director there. He really understands on a ground level how complicated and how important it is to do this kind of work. So we're happy to have all of those as funded grant partners. And these in-kind grant partners are people that stepped up that said, yes, we want to be part of this. We want to support this. Like, we're in. This is an important project. Let's start talking about it. So the Department of Agriculture, the idea that you could have a fair price list, starting with produce, expanding to meat and eggs, that the state of West Virginia says to hospitals, to schools, like, if you're paying these prices, nobody's ripping you off. This is a fair price. Consumers can pay that. State agencies can pay that and feel good about that. Because right now, most of them are just in the dark. They're going to the grocery store, buying things off the Cisco truck. And so they're worried about making sure that they're paying a fair price so that they can feed as many students as possible. And Nicholas County Schools, Pocahontas County Schools. Hyrox, I said I'm in Pocahontas County tonight. Emmet's in Pocahontas County tonight. So Pocahontas County, Nicholas County, and Fayette County are where we kind of focused this pilot. We thought about going statewide, and I would love to go statewide. I'd love to invite people from all around the state to join us in this project as we keep moving forward, but also wanted to make a manageable size project. So As I say, I like to under promise on a grant and over deliver. So you're all invited to the party. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Some of you may be familiar with New Roots Community Farm. That's in Fayette County. They've been doing a lot of farm to school, a lot of developing markets, working with farmers. The Office for Child Nutrition at the Department of Education, that's all the cafeterias. That's all the school buyers of local foods. And West Virginia is really recognized, I think, in the country as a leader in farm to school. And so it's just wonderful to have both the Department of Agriculture for the state of West Virginia and the Department of Education coming together to say, yes, let's work on these price lists together so that we can distribute them to our nutrition directors, to our buyers, to our communities across the state, with the state of West Virginia saying, this is not just one person that's like, you know, trying to make a killing on you or rip you off. This is actually a real cost. NRCS is a wonderful thought partner, extension right in there, helping us with outreach and information, helping think about it. The West Virginia Farmers Market Association. Hey, y'all. Yeah, thank you guys for coming on board with the partnership. Thanks for being somebody that's willing to help think about this project and promote this project. The Fair Pricing Project will be developed as a statewide campaign that people can use at farmers markets all across West Virginia. And then at WVU, the Institute for Rural and Community Health, they're working a lot with hospitals and with health and thinking about local foods, nutrient-rich local foods as a real determinant of health. So how do we work with them to figure out how to integrate with hospital buyers or pharmacy programs, and the idea that you can do direct to consumer, but also you could have a contract or 2 or 3 that you're getting and negotiating in January for a certain amount that you're going to produce for your school or hospital or your pharmacy program at these fair prices that you can depend on for the year of production. Emmett?
We need your help. We are reaching out to growers who are passionate about their work, whether you garden for market or grow for yourself. Your labor and the production records of how much time you put in and how much you produce will help us gather the data we need to ensure that growers like you can earn a living wage. So this is one of our crop pricing examples that we did at our farm. We planted some provider bush beans, and we use a program called Tend to kind of estimate and plan out where our plantings will be. And it estimated that we would do about 112 pounds of beans on a 450-foot row. And over on the left here, you can see about halfway down, we actually yielded about 85. So it's always good to write down how much you think you might yield, no matter what you're growing or producing, and then how much you actually did to see if you improve or don't improve. But, and then over here on the right is another type of green bean that doing the same metrics, the same bed feet, but changing the variety, the yield estimate almost doubles. So when talking about crops, the one that or the variety you choose to produce can change your yield and how much money you're making drastically.
Let me just add on to that for a second before we go on to the next slide. So we thought with what we planted, we were going to yield 112 pounds of green beans. What we actually yielded from that was 85 pounds. So that was well below. But we kept track of our inputs, the seed cost, and also the labor. So cultivation, planting, pest and disease control, harvest, wash and pack. There were other inputs that we didn't actually track here, right? How much we spend on fertilizer, those kinds of things. We sold all of our green beans that we harvested. So that's a win. And we sold them for $340. The total cost for the whole thing, including labor, was $379. So production cost per pound was $446. So actually, if we're counting $15 an hour as a living wage for farmers, We lost 46 cents a pound on our green beans, and we thought we were doing good. So it was really interesting to look at it this way. We sold them for $4 a pound. We would have broken even with these beans that we grew if we had sold them for $4.46 a pound. So 10 is great, and there's now a 10 2.0, so it's getting better, but we thought we could do a better job of that, of creating a simple calculator that helps us keep track of inputs. We could easily make one like this for meat. Well, I don't know about easily, but we could work together to make one like this for meat or for eggs. But fundamentally, the idea that you're keeping track of how much you're putting in, which anybody that's keeping farm production records is pretty good at knowing how much you spent at the store for the stuff that you bought, right? And how much you sold it for. But we've really got to attend to how much time does it take you to do that and to do a good job of it? And how much time does it take you, even if you're still learning and you're new?
Let me jump in here. Katie asked about a calculator. Next week's session, oh, let me turn my video on. Next week's session is about the Cornell meat calculator, and we will actually have the creator of the Cornell meat calculator here. His name is Mr. Matt LaRue. So like all these inputs that we're talking about now and these spreadsheets that she's showing you really is the like she kind of explained with that app with the produce is the backbone of what that calculation's made from. Okay, so we've all been tracking, you know, what we've been selling meat per pound, and we're wanting to expand now into making sure that we're thinking about our inputs, because there is a calculator for meat, and you'll learn how to use it next week. I'm sure there's multiple varieties, but we will be using the Cornell meat calculator next week, and you guys will have access to that.
Go ahead, Emmett. Talk to us
So
about what you made here.
this is a tool that I've been working on to just keep track of the amount of money that we've spent on the various inputs and the utilities, and also how much time it would take, or how much time it does take in our inputs. So up top here, all right, we start with our amount planted, which we have been doing in row feet, and then our input costs right below that. You would include anything, in this case, that you use to keep your crop going, such as fertilizer, pesticide, or anything that you're not going to reuse. Your seed cost and utility cost. We've also, it's important to record your yield, so you can divide that by your total inputs and your labor cost to determine what you should sell things at to be able to break even. And then for our recording of time, we do it all in minutes to be able to break it down a little easier. And our cultivation time, our watering and care time, which is care would be weeding or pruning, planting, pest and disease control time, harvest time, and wash pack time. Obviously, it would be a lot different if you're doing meat, but it's a good starting point of where you should be breaking down various things that you're doing and keeping track of how much time you spend on each of them for each product that you're growing or producing.
And I think the Cornell meat calculator that we were just talking about is going to be a great tool to do it for meat. One of the things that I would note about this is that when we're counting our yield for produce, we're counting the yield that's actually saleable. So anything that's like below standard or run out for meat, that would be okay, right? I got a lamb on the hoof. And what is the translation then from how much they finish at as a live animal to how much we actually finish with as cut meat in packages, which is always a guess for me. And I'm still trying to get better at it after more than 20 years.
We aim to foster prosperity and access across the entire agricultural community by growing beautiful food for the people in our own communities who need it the most. This project aims not only to cultivate a successful pilot program, but also to pave the way for a transformative statewide endeavor and to uplift every farmer across West Virginia. Thank you. And I've included my contact and Hyrox's website down here below if you have any more questions or would like to reach out to me for anything.
So if any of you, I know some of you are doing produce already, if you're interested in picking a crop or two, like here at my house, I think we're going to do butternut squash and Roman tomatoes this year for this project. And we're going to keep track of it so that we can add data, because yeah, everybody's data is going to be a little bit different. The bigger of a data set that we can build across multiple producers, the better that final fair price list is going to be in the end. So if any of you are interested in doing that for produce, we would love to have you join us. And you can reach out to Emmet for that. If we get enough data from the Cornell meat calculator, that's something that we could also think about plugging in here. But I really want to, this is only the second time that we've publicly talked about this project. So I do really want to hear from you guys in the audience about your thoughts. Hearing this, I know that when I talked to my father-in-law, who's also a farmer, right? We're on a 10th generation family farm here. He was like, people never pay that much money. It's never going to happen. I was like, well, they better. We're not going to have any farms. But just love to hear like your honest feedback, thoughts, questions. Do you think we can do this? Does this seem compelling? Idea. This is our best thinking so far. We just made this up and we got a grant, and looking forward to your input on how to make it better and smarter and more strategic. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see your faces, and I'll turn it back over to our facilitator.
All right, let me go ahead and do our closing. I'll stop the recording and then we can talk about your project, if that's okay. That way we can have more on a sharing back and forth. People don't have to worry about being recorded. So again, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Emmet. Thank you for presenting your project. It's going to be quite exciting to see that going forward, because there are a lot of projects. We are one partner with WVU on a project that will focus on the hospital benefits and hospital purchasing. So we are on that as well, and with Farm to School, the West Virginia Farmers Market Association also works with that program. So we're lining out markets all over the state. Many people are working to facilitate market access. Thank you for joining us tonight. Next week, again, we will be talking about the Cornell meat calculator. So if you want to join us for that, we would love to have you. And I will go ahead and stop the recording for tonight. Thanks so much.